Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Martin Scorsese's Casino in 1995. Here we are with Casino. This will be coming before my Goodfellas review because tonight I decided to watch Casino, rewatch that again, and in a few days it'll be Goodfellas. But yes, Casino is a film that I've seen quite a few times. At least 10 actually. And I saw it around the time where I first watched Goodfellas. I think I was the age of around 11 or something like that. And I did love it. And it's only kind of grown on me over the years. It's a film I have enjoyed even more. On rewatches, and it's not the most. Maybe at the time it wasn't the most critically acclaimed Scorsese. It's got around an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it is in the top 250 on IMDb. And over the years, people have kind of agreed that it's one of his at least 10 best films. Most people, of course. I don't disagree. It's an absolutely stunning film. And here we go again, another announcement. It's one of the favourite films, that I'll be reviewing over these next few weeks. Yes, this is the film of today that is on my favourite films list. And I just think it's amazing. A lot of people, of course, the the common kind of for me incorrect opinion and kind of arrogant opinion is that it's like a rehash of Goodfellas, or it's Goodfellas in Las Vegas. Or it's just kind of like an inferior version, and it's wrong, it's not, it's very very similar in terms of the camera movements and everything, the tracking shots and kind of the free flowing gliding, shots and the freeze frames and stuff, and the kind of the thing that Scorsese does in a lot of his films around that time. He done Goodfellas and even Raging Bull, the kind of dazzle you with the lights and everything, and freeze frames and all that sort of the techniques. The way it moves and everything, it's like Goodfellas. And of course, it has some of the same actors and stuff. Joe Pesci and Rob De Niro, of course, in the lead role. This would be, Rob De Niro's kind of first lead role in Scorsese since King of Comedy, and Raging Bull. It's really his last collaboration as well, with Scorsese, until of course coming up with The Irishman. It's really really interesting, and it is similar in some of the style and kind of the way that it's shot, and the way that the music is used, you could say, as well, of Goodfellas. But it's very very different, completely different, and it's different themes it explores. Of course, with these gangster films, a couple of things are going to cross over, but it is very different. It's its own thing, of course, and a lot darker, I would say, even more violent. There's some very upsetting stuff. I would call it upsetting. And Scorsese, I think he handles the violence perfectly. Of course, he wanted to go for something, basically not hold back, because this sort of stuff did happen. If he kind of approaches, if it happened like that, you should show it like that, and that's great that he just went ahead with it. Very excessive violence, the vice in the head scene. Even more upsetting would be some of the final scenes with the baseball bats. That is something that's really really graphic. Or even the bit where the guy gets hit to the neck and the bag over his head. That all comes quite late in the film and bits, but. Yeah, of course, it's it's operatic, just like Goodfellas as well. But it's very very different. What this film does, it's in Las Vegas. It explores the 70s and the 80s, and then the kind of Robert De Niro plays Sam Rothstein, basically in charge of the casinos. He runs one of these casinos and stuff. And his friend, played by Joe Pesci, he's kind of out of control. In a kind of brilliant Joe Pesci fashion, absolutely, unhinged character who, is he's scary, very very scary. The way he can just fly off the handle, he's more intense in this than he is in. Well, at times he's more intense than he is in Goodfellas. I'm not quite sure which one he's more, more of an evil character. But I think all the relationships in this film are very different, very very different to Goodfellas. As well, it explores greed in a very particular way that really other Scorseses don't. And you know, it's just as well. It kind of deals with the family drama very differently. You know, and it's got a different structure as well. This one is very basically very dark at times from the outset. It does have the energy, you know, like Goodfellas does, but really after the first hour, it kind of slowly becomes more and more of a downfall and darker. And even in the first hour, it's not quite the tone of Goodfellas in that way. That it's kind of upbeat more. Yeah, it's very dark, and the use of music as well is very particular in that, and it brings out the atmosphere. It's a much more of a darker atmosphere and feel to the film. The colours is, you know, the colours in this film are stunning. All the colours, the reds and everything, and the way that the casino lights kind of play off at different scenes is wonderful. And then you've got the great scenes in the actual desert, you know, which is kind of his ode to the westerns. Scorsese, you know, he kind of said that was an ode to the westerns in the way it kind of the standoff. It was basically that, you know, just with words. And you know, the way that you know they drive off as well, and the kind of dust and everything, and that's where they go to settle their business kind of thing. And you know, it's just wonderfully shot, this film. You know, the way it constantly has this flow is something else. You know, the performances are stunning. And it really is a unique Scorsese. It's yes, as I say, the style and everything is a bit similar to Goodfellas, but what it tries to do here you know, it achieves it perfectly. It's very different. You know, it's basically about you know, how you get too greedy and things get out of control and you don't keep a, you know, a lock on it. You know, it can get very ugly very quickly. Harsh times, you know, and harsh environment. You know, things can just get out of hand. And you know, Las Vegas, it kind of explores that. You know, based of course on true stuff, and of course screenplay, you know, co-written by Scorsese and Nicholas Pileggi, and yeah, you know, of course it was based on his book, and you know, the screenplay is wonderful. You know, it's just stunning. What this film as well, you know, kind of what it does, you know, so well is kind of it's the way it's very, you know, how it informs you on all this you know, casino lifestyle. You know, from the very, you know, the first half an hour is very heavy on narration, and actually showing you very specific stuff within the casinos. But it does it's, you know, of course people would always say the show not tell rule. You know, this is one of the cases where I can kind of I don't always think that that's necessary in certain ways. It can overlap and it can kind of be done in a way where, you know, because the narration is very, it tells you a lot about the, you know, it's very informative, but it's also visual, and it's, you know, absolutely stunning. The visuals, the visual storytelling is in this film, it's just amazing. Every shot is just timed perfectly and edited in just wonderful ways. You know, it does have at times dreamlike effect, surreal effect, and as well, it's very naturalistic at times as well. You know, the desert scenes, but it's, you know, it's very surreal, and it's meant to overwhelm you with the, you know, casino lifestyle, the excess of it. That's one of the key themes of the film, excess, and how that can kind of get out of control, and that kind of mirrors the different characters and with the kind of visuals of the film, and you know, Sharon Stone in particular, she plays, you know, a character that really, you know, Ginger, is something, you know, that she can just fly off the handle. Very complex character, and Sharon Stone is wonderful in this film. You know, all the performances are wonderful. De Niro is something else in this film. One of his 10 best performances. You know, he's so good. He's my favourite actor of all time. In case you didn't know, if you've not seen any other reviews of me, it's talking about De Niro. Yeah, he's my favourite actor. I think he's the greatest. You know, above Jimmy Stewart, and you know, I'm not going to get into other ones that I spoil. But yes, you know, he's always really been my favourite. And this is one of probably his 10 best performances. He's wonderful in this film. You know, it's a character that I really cared for at times, and of course is very aggressive as well. But a lot of the time you can kind of understand, and he's the one that kind of is the most, you know, in control and tries to keep everything in check. You know, Joe Pesci plays, you know, and Sharon Stone are more outrageous characters kind of thing. Don Rickles as well is great in this film. Frank Vincent, I love, you know, I loved Frank Vincent when he was doing films with Scorsese. Raging Bull, you know, as I said, is probably his biggest biggest role in a Scorsese. Of course, the Goodfellas scene. That scene is one of the most memorable scenes in cinema. He always makes it just even more of an experience. The ones he's in, he's great. He was great. He was great acting, and he's great here. Very different. And actually, they kind of do a thing that flips something. I'm not going to say in one of them other Scorsese's if you've not seen it, and I think that was really, really, great what they done there. It's kind of like an opposite thing they done there, but he was great. The cast are wonderful, and the screenplay is wonderful. Sharon Stone, what very, very, psychotic character she plays, and I love the relationship, the kind of triangle that happens. That it goes on between her, Joe Pesci, De Niro's character throughout the film. It really has for such a compelling drama, and it's very, very powerful. Certainly in the last hour of the film, once it deals with the family life, De Niro and her kids, and how what happens with Sharon Stone's character of Ginger, how it affects the kid and all that sort of stuff, and their marriage, and yeah, it's just it's just a wonderful film. I think it's an easy masterpiece. And it just the way it portrays it explores this Las Vegas kind of lifestyle and everything in the 70s and the 80s. The kind of production design is wonderful as well. The soundtrack is something else. Of course, once again, Rolling Stones music in the film, and Scorsese has great taste in music. I just love how he uses all the rock songs and everything and pop songs, and always placed at the right moments to give an effect, as well as just being a great soundtrack you can listen to on it in its own right. But the use of classical music is very, very key in this film as well. The opening titles and many other different pieces throughout that are very, very they just give it this operatic feel, and it's just wonderfully used. This film has such a flow and an energy, and it shocks you, at times. Just very, very jarring uses of violence in a great way, and even the pen scene, that is very brutal stuff. But it's always, it's never gratuitous in any way. It's just a great use of violence, I feel. Scorsese's never really annoyed me with any of it. He always knows how to do this, really, use of violence, and it's always in a true way, and also in a stylized at times in some of his films, but in a great way. He's a master director, and this is one of his, of what I've seen, 9 masterpieces. I will tell you. And it's just a wonderful film. It's much more than just a follow-up to Goodfellas, and kind of a Goodfellas in Las Vegas, and it's just great how Scorsese is able to, of course, do some great films say in New York and all that kind of stuff, and in Las Vegas as well, portray that, and this is definitely definitely a flawless film for me. I just absolutely love this film. The first hour, I will say, is very, very much the rise, and then really the second 2 hours are the fall, but it's very, very different to what you've seen in previous Scorsese's. Rage and Bull as well. That was kind of rise and fall split. Goodfellas, you could say the same. This is very different. It's because it's kind of like it's got very, very dark moments throughout, and the ways that you kind of see things aren't quite going according to the plan of the characters. But this has got great comedy as well. It's not a fully dark film, and it is very, very energetic in the way that the camera moves and everything like that, and the use of music, and the dialogue is just so kinetic. Joe Pesci is really just amazing in this film. De Niro is even better. There's certain scenes in the last hour that are just stunning acting, outstanding from all involved. James Woods, is in this film. He's great. I love James Woods. He's not been in loads and loads of films that are well known, but from every time I've seen him, he's great. Once Upon a Time in America, I think he gave a masterful performance in that. And it's interesting because of course De Niro was with him on that, and they're here again together, kind of playing very different dynamics, which is great. It's interesting to see that, and he's kind of Sharon Stone's other love interest in the film. He's great when he's in it, and great performance. But De Niro really is the best in this film. But Sharon Stone is something, easily far and away her best performance I've seen. If people say that she's not a good actress, watch this film, alone, and that will tell you, she's really great when given the right material and direction. But yeah, I just think this is an absolute masterpiece. Um, it's very very violent, but the violence is really really well done, greatly done. This film is just perfect from start to finish. Really, I cannot floor it, and it gets into my plus tiers. Actually, I'd have to give this film 100% plus tier 3, and it is quite a high tier 3. It's very very close into the tier 2. It could have been, and I think as great as this film is, as great as masterful and perfect as it is, it's not even in my top, 6, 7 Scorsese's. That's how good he is, and this is it's great. Scorsese really has made, from what I've seen, just a masterpiece. Some of the best films, basically, of each decade. I won't ruin too much, but here a couple of the decades, two each time, at least, some of the best films I've seen. And this is definitely, it was one of the best films in the 90s, and the 90s was for me one of the best decades in cinema. This isn't as good as Goodfellas, which I'll be reviewing very soon, but it's just such a great film. I think it's great in every way. Masterful. The camera, the cinematography is wonderful. The editing is really wonderful. Again, Film Schoonmaker, of course, would work once again with Scorsese. She has done on most of his films, really. And their collaboration is just really, really great. I feel the editing in this film is striking. It's something else, and the uses of light and shadows, and the way these speed ups and the freeze frames and all this kind of stuff. Something else really creates all the right effects. It's not flashy, showy kind of stuff. It's always for the right moments, but it adds this grace to the picture, and as well it jars you at times in all the right moments. The performances, as I've said, are stunning. Something else, I think it's a shame that Joe Pesci he's not been in too much over recent years. But of course, coming back for The Irishman, because Joe Pesci, when he was in these Scorsese films, was so good. Sharon Stone as well. I think she's so good in this film, and it's a shame that she's not been in too much of great stuff. James Woods as well, but of course De Niro is just a master, and once again proves that he's my favourite actor. But this isn't even in his top 8 performances, I wouldn't say. That's how good he is. So Casino, 1995, and not even the maybe not even the third best film of that year, but the 90s was such a great year for film, but and this is one of the masterpieces. Scorsese once again in full control of the direction, of course, one of the screenwriters, and just stunning, a stunning film. Highly recommend it. Casino, at times it's underrated, I feel. Definitely more loved now, in the last maybe decade, from what I can see online and stuff. Looking into the history of it, it's a bit divisive among some critics, especially at the time. But Casino for me is an absolute masterpiece, and definitely recommend this. Another Scorsese reviewed, and next up, of course, in 4K, which is really amazing 4K, Goodfellas. And this will be a special review, quite a long review, probably longer than this. But I thoroughly look forward to reviewing that, and another Scorsese Casino reviewed. Thanks for watching, and more will be up, of course, of Scorsese. I think some of the other ones I'll do soon. Departed, Gangs in New York. That will really be very, very. It might be towards the end of the year if I'll be doing that, because I watched them, kind of recently, and I want to wait a bit. And also, there's a couple of other things, ones I want to rewatch first, or watch I haven't seen yet. You know, and I'll probably be reviewing The Wolf of Wall Street quite soon. You know, Silence as well. I think Silence might be. I might have to rewatch that again at some point down the line in order to give that a proper review. Because I've only seen that once. It's kind of hard to review based. I saw it in January. But yes, you know, I look forward to all these Scorsese reviews because he's one of my top 10 directors of all time. So yes, thanks for watching my review of Scorsese's Casino.